Have you ever seen why love can't exist as a matter? In what forms do we interpret love? We feel it in the physical, the spiritual. We can even see it through our eyes or through all of our senses. We can even experience it through the mind, interpreting memory and memory being locked in. And also through challenging or channeling a thought of love in the mind. For example, you could stare out the window of your kitchen, standing by the chairs that you have by the window, beautiful white chairs, as the sun, the golden sun, peels through the windows in the morning. And you can hear the birds just so subtly behind your ears. But it's not what you're fully paying attention to. It's kind of background noise, it's out of the way. But what your eyes really settle on is the fact that there's a dog walking. He's at the edge of your lawn, and he's cheerfully tattering on by. He's tattering on down with his tongue out of his mouth. He moves his head with such finesse, ebbing and flowing, and his hops, the way that his body moves, and just the style of brown that he is. Now, each of these thoughts is a pure source of love. You see his color, and it's love, but you also see his movement. Completely different thing, something moving over the span of time. And this is a form of love. You examine with desire, those hops that he's making, those are pretty cool. Those are actually kind of nice. Looks like it's making him happier. An observation has come in. It's also a form of divine love. But even the birds in the background also serves as a form of love. You hear them turtling, and you think in your mind almost you're blind to it at the time unless you channel the thought. And in the back of your mind, you're imagining what the birds could look like, where they could be standing, where they could be perched. But all at the same time, if you've already passed through what you were thinking about the dog and what you're thinking about the bird, then your awareness has come back into the home. And now you're thinking about your personal life, something that is such a gift and filled with such richness, the experience of a human life, and just the sheer capacity of love. If you were able to try to store it all, you would surely die because of just how much bliss and love is in one human existence. You stand on the tile floor as you turn your head away from the sun-shearing window. And the sun still pierces your eyes from the side, and it just adds a beautiful fluorescentness to whatever you stare at. And just the sheer deepness of love and how everything swims in it, lives in it, dies in it, sees in it, feels and exists in it. Now, in Christianity, where it's written, love covers a multitude of sins. You take, for example, a naughty boy. Maybe he's your son in this house, and there's a playroom that you have specially built for him, but he never cleans up his toys. And you ask him, please, Johnny son, please, Johnny son, pick up your toys. And in the back of your mind, you think, this is the 57th time I've said this over the 3 years that I've been raising Johnny son. And he still has his train tracks out, his Legos out. He even pours the bucket completely on the ground. And it's as if he's turned the floor into an ocean. He gets in there and he kicks the Legos so hard that they splatter against the wall. They go everywhere. I'm surprised anyone can even walk in the room without stepping on one like it's a landmine. And so Johnny's son isn't listening to what his father has asked him to do. We could compare this a lot to us not following what our Father in heaven has asked us to do. But then it all comes down into personal interpretation of the Bible. It also comes down into personal context, personal timing, one's status in life. It could even come down to all minuscule factors like age, position. It could come down to the minuscule detail, for one thing affects things in such a subtle way. And just as things affect each other in such a subtle way, the dad of Johnny's son, Billy Bob, he's a southerner who loves repeater rifles, cowboy boots with stars, and he loves looking at Johnny's son play with his Legos. So he's watching Johnny's son play with his Legos. He sees the ocean of Legos. They're practically half the Legos Johnny's son can't even play with because they're so far away from his hand's reach. And Billy Bob looks and he sees there's some really valuable pieces out there on the edge, but he's thrown them all against the wall. And he sees him trying to build something. He's been observing for a long time, so it's obvious he's going for a spaceship. It's a cool gray and dark gray spaceship, and he uses a cockpit glass window from a car. He creates it with design and desire, but he's missing one part for the wing. This will be a dark gray portion of the wing. And he's getting very frustrated. Johnny's son's getting really frustrated. He's practically about to start making the ocean even further in range. He's about to start expanding on the ocean. But Billy Bob locates at the end of the field of where he's been throwing all these parts. There's the dark gray piece of the wing. And so Billy Bob so kindly says, Johnny, son, I see a part of the... But before Billy Bob can even finish the question, the statement, the advice, the information, he goes, and he picks up a handful of Legos and he throws them at Billy Bob. And it actually, even Billy Bob has had a personal life. He just got home from work. Turns out he just got a demotion, something that rarely ever happens, and he's had a terrible day. Family is going hard, and the Legos hit him in just a certain way where it actually ticks him off. And he goes, I've had enough. And then he catches himself. He says, I've had enough of you not picking up your Legos, son. I'm going to go make us some breakfast. And let's sit down and eat some breakfast. And they both fall into a long state of pondering and awareness. And a long time passes as Billy Bob walks away. But if love covers a multitude of sins, and which Jesus wants us not to be lukewarm about saying whether something is a sin or is not a sin. He doesn't want us to say, it actually is a sin to be doing that. From a philosophical point of view, it's not a sin to be doing that. So a lot of time passes. There's still time passing. And if it was a sin for Billy Bob to go, you know what? I've had enough. And if it was a sin for Johnny's son to throw Legos, just the pure fact that they're Legos, the pure fact that time passed away the moment the Legos hit him, the pure fact that the spaceship is almost complete, the pure fact of possibility of what Billy Bob is thinking about his son, what he's layering the room with in awareness, in love. He's been sitting there just observing his son in such love, watching him skillfully place Legos together. Even the skill itself covers sins for love of skill. And so it is that love of any virtue could cover sins. So he goes to the stovetop and he says, okay, let's do this. I just clutched up and I'm about to get to eat breakfast with my son. And I bet you when I go back in there, he's going to have gotten that wing part, put the ship together. So I'm not only going to get to see that ship, I'm going to get to say, good job, son. And we're going to get to sit down and eat pancakes and eggs as he reaches in and pulls out the eggs. Now, Johnny's son likes his eggs sunny side up and scrambled, but Billy Bob, no, he knows that today would be a day that he wanted sunny side up eggs. So he goes for them, he throws them on the skillet, and they cook. They start cooking underneath the stove light. And the sheer quantity of awareness that can come out of one moment, to think if we were stuck in this room for the next eternity, we could spend all of years talking about the carton of eggs, studying the carton of eggs, using the carton of eggs, then using the parts of the carton of eggs that are left over after we've used all the eggs. You could spend all eternity in this room and not run out of things to think about. For example, think about how quickly something becomes unbelievably unlimited. You go into the room full of Legos and you start to talk about the 4 wide black Lego part, and then you start to talk about in all the situations that it would be useful. Then you talk about the specific situation of what it would look like on the back plate bumper of a car. Quickly, everything becomes extremely unlimited. So the eggs sizzle and the oil pops. It's olive oil, of course, because it's healthy. So a deep silence falls over the kitchen, but it does not surpass the crackling. It seems to be aligned right alongside the crackling, throughout the crackling, and based on the state that the mind is in. But it seems very hard to challenge the awareness to say, shall I focus on the sizzling crackling alone, or the peace alone? But Billy Bob seems to fall into the silence, and he starts meditating on life and on God. And he thinks, God, I've tried to be upright all my life. And I guess I just come before you with a little bit of prayer and talking. And I think, we've done a pretty good job in this household. It's just me and Johnny's son. And we got to go to Mass like every single Sunday. The only times we couldn't make it is when we had a challenge where we just couldn't make it. And I loved going. Every time we went, just all those relationships. And it's so good for Johnny's son to be around those kids. They're just good Christian kids. Father, I love sitting in those pews. Although we have our favorite spot, and sometimes it gets challenged, we don't get to sit there. Every time I sit in your peaceful sanctuary, I just feel like I'm alone with you, and I'm alone with the whole world. And like, we're making so much reparation for the damages caused around the whole world. Like, just think, Father, the wars and all the salvation that we could bring through prayer and through works to help them. So I just pray for those that are in war. And because of the righteousness of Billy Bob's prayer, that prayer lands. It feels as if it's been stapled to the wall on a bounty poster of such rich value that the moment God looks at the prayer or looks at it behind himself, that the bounty will surely be exacted to the same price, the honest and merciful price that Billy Bob was asking for, and through the same mercy of God. God looks at the prayer. Was he asking for a lot of souls from the war? Was he asking for the children in poverty too? Was he asking for the kids that died of the gunshot? They're obviously saved. I mean, they're just kids. Was he asking about the people that are really evil and have guns? Or was he asking for the good people who are fighting on the good side? Is he asking for the people that are hostage in the situation, who have gotten trapped in the situation? Those who are dying from injuries right now? Or is he asking for what's going to happen over the course of the next 500 days and all the people that could possibly die? he even went further, and God thought about that further. He could cover such a multitude and array of possibilities and spawn so much goodness and such a relief of suffering, such beautiful fruits of salvation, life, livelihood, prevention of injury, extra food, less war, a shorter battle altogether, could go as far as the eye sees. So the bounty stays on the wanted poster until the Father looks at the prayer. But because of the man's righteousness, it is not gone unseen nor unheard. So he prays this whole prayer in the room of eternity where the eggs are cooking on the stove. And he quickly snaps out of it. He's still in that state of peace and calm. And he scouts the room and sees his granite countertop and his sink, just that deep sink, empty of dishes, clean, as if Dawn dish soap did the job, as his blue Dawn dish soap sits by the side. The eggs still crackle, and it's almost time to flip. Hopefully they don't get overcooked as we talk about the potential of clean and cleanliness. So, if we wanted to be clean for our Father in heaven, or for Jesus, or for our entryway into heaven, or for others, or for ourselves, or for even something that gets the mark missed, like for plants and for animals and for fish. Would we want to be clean for fish, plants, and animals, God, humans, and others, our family? So we think about, how would we get clean here? Let's say he spilt pure olive oil on his hands and said, do I really need to use Dawn dish soap to get rid of this pureness on my hand? Or should I rub it into my other hand and up my arms until there's no more and I've dispersed the olive oil? Now I've got an oil advantage of purity. But let's say he picked up pork chops with his bare hands and he says, should I rub this into my other hand and up my arms? Or should I go to my deep dish sink and splatter the Dawn dish soap as the water runs hot? Kind of nice. That sweet sensation. And the same principle goes for uncleanliness, but just as Jesus said, never let your hearts be troubled, nor let them be afraid. And if your heart does not convict you, just keep coming. And so, if the man claims that the pork chops aren't dirty, and he claims that he can rub them up his arms, and from his perspective, his heart's not convicting him, then who are we to stand in and be the judge? What if we wanted to rub something like pork chops up our arm? But then we could come back to something that we all kind of have a potential for spawning cleanliness, or just a map that I saw, which would be a personal overestimation of ability and possibility, which is, all right, let's go get perfect diet, perfect exercise, meditation, perfection, prayer and perfection, perfect relationships, perfect travel, never missing the mark, always staying on balance, not making any mistakes, and only if I make a mistake will I jump on course even up a status, as if I had hit rock bottom and clutched up like a cliffhanger moment with an ice pick, grabbing it just as I was about to fall under a crystallized cavern, and then throwing my second pick up and climbing in such a resilient manner. And this is a good example of an easy way to go uphill, and where it's reported, the gate is narrow and for those who are just so righteous, but it's wide and easy for those it leads to destruction. And those who find the narrow gate are very few in between. And those who find the large gate are many. Now, if we found perfect diet, meditation, exercise, cliffhanger moments, perfection on balance, and clutching up, we can choose to pour all of our energy into that plan. But because of impermanence, and due to impermanence, if we try to focus on that plan for more than 1 minute, it will probably pass away. So where it's also written, what's not done at a moment's notice cannot be done again. We also we could factor this in and say, okay, I have a clear shot for what's called the narrow gate. There's a high reward, high merit, high status. Likelihood of being in a better position in heaven, better position in this life. I've got a clear shot for it. I may only have 1 minute before this idea passes. So I've got a few potential things I could do. I could expand on the plan. I could work on the plan. I could think about the plan. I could start an effort. I could write a list and say, Isaac, you got to do this list. I could say, me, you got to do this list. You got to get out there and do this list. But to think just how much you're missing in that pure moment. I have the perfect shot, but there's no way I technically have enough time to make that whole shot in 1 moment. So then it comes down to basic principles that you've heard in the world spiraling out of direction that seems to pass away. Well, we shall pick up a good diet. We shall go with avocados and omega-3 salmon. We shall pick out specific vitamins through studying. We shall study cholesterol, fats, or macronutrients. We shall study blood vessels and plaque and muscles and teeth, eye health of all. And then to say, we shall study charity, the charity of helping others. And to say, this is just all too much for me. I just can't seem to get this done. Well, it seems that we let the egg burn on the stove while we were thinking about washing our hands with Dawn dish soap. But that's no courage for what present time has presented us. And that's more eggs and more a possibility to throw more on the skillet. We come down as Billy Bob, and now we're in first person perspective. I've got a pan flipper, spatula. I've got 1 egg in the other. I crack it. I put it in the pan. I have to put some more olive oil in there, and I had to do a little bit of cleaning because of the burnt. And then I crack another one, and these are just going to be sunny side up like they always were. But the other food is actually almost done. It's not in a bad condition. And time passes super quickly in this state. And I flip it with the spatula again. It's got a perfect tinge for that sunny side pop and juicy run. And I think in my mind, how is Johnny-san doing in the Lego room? And I think about him. I hear him splashing around in there with the Legos. It honestly sounds like he hasn't even put the ship part back together. Maybe I should go in there and check on him. But life is not interesting if everything is perfect. And think about how perfect this moment really is. What kind of disaster can we bring upon the story to make it interesting? So there's the person that strives for the narrow gate, They come up with some sort of plan that they actually think that they can follow, and they shoot out to go upstream. They have a car, they have a job, they're a different person. But they throw all caution to the wind after year one, and they fall back into a really bad behavior. But in their heart, they let their heart convict them. They don't challenge the fact that the heart is pure as a rock and can overcome any circumstance. And sometimes even the hardening properties that you've heard about a heart could even be a strengthening behavior of the heart itself. Depends on one's faith and how thyself could use this principle. But for the year before they fell, they were challenging awareness and they were doing charity, staying in devotion and reading the Bible. They were even studying greater philosophy and how to help the world. They even were thinking about striving to be a teacher or to do volunteer work 6 days a week and to dip into their savings just to get some volunteer work done. They thought about all of this, but then they decided, I will go back and I will live the life that I was living. Now, we are not God to step in and judge this person, because even if one thought that we never mentioned in their heart was that this guy luckily stood on the ground of a very solid foundation when he said in his heart, mercy is God's greatest attribute, and no matter what happens, I will be in heaven. And I will humble myself and exalt my brothers, even in my fallen state, and even whenever I fall. And he crafted this foundation when he was in a period of righteousness. Now he's standing on something so firm, solid, precious, useful, desirable. Something that provides an insoluble amount of perfection. Something that is as creative as the usefulness of the tongue and of thought to get something done. Now there's other extremely solid foundations, like the foundation of Jesus Christ, to build on something that is even more firm than stone. One man sets out on his journey and says, today I will build on Jesus Christ. I will read the Bible and I will pick up prayer and a relationship to him. Another person says, today I will build on my sports car, my wife, and my home of great riches. And another person says, today I will build on my farm and on my plants, and I will build it on my family and on my kids. But when they were all asked, would you like a stouter reward? Would you like to go toward the kingdom of heaven? Would you like a greater reward in the kingdom of heaven? Would you like to strive for a greater reward in the kingdom of heaven? And they are asked ceaselessly, constantly, as if participating in a movie, a great act, or some other great behavior. And when the farmer was asked if he would like to strive for a greater reward, he said, no, I have a wife, children, and farming. I'm giving food to all the people. And so it was. And when the rich man was asked, would you like to strive for a higher, deeper, better reward in the kingdom? And he said, no, I'm newly married and I've still got a car and a giant important job. But when the man was asked, who stayed in the Bible, kept his nose there, said in his heart, I will try to teach. I will try to exalt my brothers before themselves, and I'll try to do at least some part of what the good word is explaining. He was asked, would you like to sit at a higher place? And he said, I may, but my brothers will always sit before me first. And so it was so. Now, just as these stories mention the super secret, deep meaning and understanding of what the reward will look like, could possibly be, and might be, it is with who gained the best and highest reward. But don't be deceived by a fool wearing gold armor. For the rich man could have said in his heart something more juicy and humble, and his words could have served as a distraction from the true reality of what was going on behind his voice, the true reality of what was happening in his life. And don't be deceived by the farmer doing a good thing for his family and for his wife and for his food. For this is surely a double edged sword. It is surely upright to feed all the people and to take care of the children and the good. But just as the sinners are even nice to sinners, it's good for the righteous man to be good to sinners. But where the hidden manna is, the super secret, deep, hidden, buried treasure that's easy to observe on the surface level of the ginormous iceberg, it would obviously be stuck deep in the parable of, and I stuck my nose in the Bible, and I did charitable works, and I went to church. And yet again, don't be deceived. Because the man of the sports car and the man of the farm could have been doing better. Choose wisely, for time will surely pass away. But the divine joke, divine humor of life, and really how unimportant it actually is. It's all one in the game of life.